It's October 31st, 2025, a Friday morning in Pierre, the quiet capital city of South Dakota. Inside a windowless state server room, a lone technician stands before a towering rack of blinking lights and humming cooling fans. This climate-controlled room is the digital nerve center, the physical infrastructure that hosts the entire digital presence of the state. The technician is performing routine maintenance, a standard procedure guided by a network diagram and a set of physical wiring instructions. He reaches into a dense bundle of cables, searching for a specific connection among the thousands of blue and yellow strands of fiber. He finds the wire he's looking for, checks the small, faded plastic tag clipped to the blue casing, and carefully pulls. At that exact moment, on thousands of screens across the state, the official South Dakota state portal simply vanishes. 404 not found. Across the state, government functionality comes to a grinding halt as systems providing essential services go dark. For the next 48 hours, South Dakota undergoes a total digital blackout, a period of total silence from the highest levels of government. No driver's licenses can be issued, no unemployment filings can be processed, and no official communication can be disseminated. At first, the working theory among IT security experts is a coordinated, state-sponsored cyber attack targeting the American Midwest. It is a reasonable guess given the geopolitical climate and the sheer scale of the sudden infrastructure failure. Amazon Web Services has just failed in New York, leaving residents offline and companies unable to process basic transactions. In Seattle, Alaska Airlines is reporting its third IT failure in 3 months, grounding flights and stranding thousands of passengers. There is feverish talk of a global Microsoft outage, a systemic collapse of the cloud services we rely on daily. But as investigators trace the signal loss back to that windowless room in Pierre, the truth is far more primitive. The digital sovereignty of a U.S. state didn't fall to a foreign adversary or a sophisticated multi-layered computer virus. It fell because of a physical maintenance oversight, a mistake born of manual labor rather than a coding error, a mistake involving a faded strip of adhesive tape and a handheld label maker sitting on a dusty workbench. State officials are eventually forced to make a jarring, anticlimactic admission about the nature of the shutdown. The 48-hour total blackout of a modern government was caused by something much smaller than a hack: mislabeled wires. Here is how it unfolded. The timeline of the collapse begins on October 22nd, 2025, in the densely populated corridors of New York. Residents wake up to find their digital lives have stalled as a major Amazon Web Services outage ripples through the Northeast. On the AWS Service Status dashboard, the indicators for the region are a solid, terrifying sea of red. It is described in official reports as a significant service disruption that impacts everything from smart homes to banking apps. 1 week later, on October 29, the problem migrates to the departure gates of an Alaska Airlines hub. Check-in systems freeze, departure boards go blank, and mountain-sized piles of luggage begin to accumulate on the tarmac. An internal Alaska Airlines report describes the incident as the company's third IT failure in only 3 months. The culprit appears to be a global Microsoft outage tied to a synchronization error in the company's cloud architecture. This is the chaotic backdrop for the South Dakota blackout that begins only 2 days later. State officials are forced into a total suspension of government functionality as the state portal remains a 404 not found screen. We are constantly told that our high-tech existence is hosted in the cloud, an invisible and decentralized web of intelligence. It is marketed as a redundant and seamless system that is supposed to be immune to localized physical failure. But as the investigation begins in Pierre, the cloud feels very heavy and very grounded. It is no longer an abstract concept. It is a physical asset that requires manual care and constant physical maintenance. Our digital infrastructure is only as reliable as the human hands that touch it and the labels they choose to apply. To find out why an entire state government disappeared for 2 days, you have to look past the sophisticated software. You have to look at the physical wiring, the bundles of plastic and glass that snake through the floors of the Capitol. In a windowless room, in a single server rack, the seamless digital world hits a sudden and embarrassing dead end. In the Pierre server room, the search for a digital ghost becomes a desperate search for a physical connection. Technicians aren't looking at lines of code on a monitor. They're looking at dense cable bundles and dusty fiber optics. They are holding physical wiring diagrams, many of which are covered in hand-drawn pen corrections made by previous staff. The official digital map says the wires should be in one port, but the physical reality of the rack tells a different story. This is the exact point where the high-tech facade of a modern U.S. state falls completely apart. Officials later described the breach in the most clinical and detached terms possible to the local media. Mislabeled physical wiring. A technician reached into the rack, identified a cable by its plastic tag, and performed what should have been routine maintenance. But the tag was lying, a relic of an old configuration that was never updated in the physical world. Instead of disconnecting a redundant backup line, they had accidentally unplugged the state's entire digital existence. The seamless cloud infrastructure is revealed to be a mess of tangled wires and outdated labeling. It wasn't a state-sponsored hack from a foreign capital or a sophisticated virus designed to cripple American infrastructure. It was a simple human error involving a piece of plastic tape that cost less than 50 cents at a hardware store. For the next 48 hours, the executive branch of the South Dakota government was essentially 404 not found. The statewide IT outage is no longer a high-stakes mystery or a plot point in a techno-thriller. It is a humiliating physical reality that proves how thin the veneer of our digital sovereignty actually is. The functionality of a modern state is only as reliable as a single sticker on a wire in a windowless room. The official explanation provided by the state is almost too simple to be believed. Mislabeled physical wiring responsible for a 2-day IT outage that suspended the functionality of an entire government. But South Dakota is just one node in a larger, nationwide collapse of physical and digital systems. In Waterbury, Connecticut, a parallel crisis is unfolding, though this one is significantly wetter and more visceral. A 6-day outage leaves thousands of residents without running water or the ability to flush their toilets. The city is forced to plan emergency repairs to a water system that was supposed to be a permanent public utility. It is the same narrative of neglect that hit Alaska Airlines during the global Microsoft outage. The cloud is failing not because the code is broken, but because the physical backbone of the system is being ignored. The political fallout is starting to take a physical shape as citizens demand more accountability from their providers. In California, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors moves to officially acquire the physical assets of PG&E. They are pushing for a public power system because the private one keeps going dark due to infrastructure failures. These significant service disruptions are no longer seen by the public as unavoidable accidents or acts of God. They are being framed as physical maintenance oversights on a massive systemic scale. A failure to keep track of the cable bundles, the aging water pipes, and the aging electrical grids. The digital sovereignty of a modern state is currently being held together by a 50-cent piece of tape. And across the country, in server rooms and utility trenches, that tape is starting to fail. Back in Pierre, the 404 not found screens eventually flicker back to life as the connection is restored. The statewide IT outage is officially declared over, and the state government returns to its digital business. But the physical wiring diagrams in the server room now look very different than they did on Friday morning. They are covered in fresh, black, hand-drawn pen corrections that override the old, inaccurate digital maps. In San Francisco, the Board of Supervisors is no longer waiting for the next significant service disruption to occur. They move forward with the plan to acquire PG&E assets, trading a private cloud for a public power system. In Waterbury, the emergency repairs leave a patch of dark, fresh asphalt over the aging water pipes in the street. Infrastructure is no longer seen as an invisible, redundant service that exists somewhere in the ether. It is a series of physical cable bundles that a human being has to physically touch and correctly identify. In the windowless room in Pierre, the technician finally puts down the handheld label maker on the workbench. He peels a small white strip of adhesive plastic and carefully presses it onto a single blue wire in the rack. It is a 50-cent fix for a 48-hour disappearance, a primitive solution to a high-complexity failure. The new label is bright, clean, and at least for the time being, factually correct.